All right, IU fans. Well, Saturday happened, and I don't know. I watched that game and I kind of left it saying that wasn't all that bad, but kind of pissed Indiana didn't do better offensively because hey, if nothing else, Indiana usually finds a way to put points on the scoreboard and bother Ohio State. I don't know. I'm happy we didn't do this podcast on Saturday night. But with that said, we didn't want too much time to pass before we dove into our reactions from IU Ohio State on Saturday. The Buckeyes won 23-3. With that said, I think more people are critical of Ohio State coming out of that game than they are Indiana, given what Ohio State's expectations are this season. We're going to focus on the Hoosier perspective, give our thoughts, look forward to Friday night's matchup against the FCS Indiana State Sycamores, give some thoughts about college football and the Big Ten in general, and so much more here on episode 305 of the Hoosier Sound Pitbull Shoutout for the official podcast of Indiana HQ. Our mission and goal is simple. We want to bring in-depth analysis and coverage for IU sports to as many fans as possible across a multitude of modern platforms. We're recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Monday, September 4th, 2023, where I am your host, Nithin Krishnan. Here with me tonight is my normal co-host, Matt Lukens. Matt, hey, if nothing else, college football is underway. We're in the thick of things now. The season is off and running. We don't have to go off of preseason quotes and comments and speculation. We saw the real deal on Saturday. What were your initial observations from Indiana's defeat to the Buckeyes on Saturday, where Indiana didn't win, but they did cover?
My initial observations were this. Going into the game, if you had told me that we lost by, 20 points to Ohio State, I would have taken that because Indiana would have covered. I would have thought that Indiana would have gotten some things done offensively. And also I would have thought that the defense had shown some strides and improvement from last year this year. The latter statement is true. I think universally every IU fan is like, that's not on the defense.
Sure.
That's not the defense. I mean, you held, in my opinion, the two best wide receivers in college football to less than 50 yards?
34 yards total, yeah.
Yeah, 34 yards total combined receiving. Okay, and you made Kyle McCord looked like honestly what it was, which was an embarrassment. And that is what Indiana had to do to really win the game. What I didn't think they had to do was actually throw the forward pass, which I thought going into this year with all the hype they'd put around the two incoming quarterbacks, the second year of Walt Bell being the head of the offense, all of these weapons that they have coming back and healthy. I thought that scoring points was going to be the least of Indiana's worries this year. And that includes with what I saw yesterday, improved offensive line play. I thought for sure, this team is going to be able to get the ball up and down the field. They might, run into some takeaways and some turnovers because they're young and inexperienced. They might give up a couple sacks and some really bad plays that kill drives, but they're still able to kind of get some yardage. Now, this team looked like they were unable to move the ball at all at times on Saturday, and yet still that game was very winnable because of the performance the defense put in against Ohio State. And honestly, I left disappointed given that we only lost by 20. Like, Nathan, I know you and I agree on this because we talked about this in the playback on Saturday. We were watching it together. If Indiana had scored a touchdown, I think I would have come away feeling a lot better about this game than I did. And they were unable to put together a drive that actually got paid. Yes, they got a field goal. But, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that drive started in positive territory in the first place.
I can grab that, but yeah.
You might want to check that. But I'm pretty sure Indiana had pretty decent field position. So it's not like they moved the ball down the field a whole lot anyways on the drive. They ended up getting points on in the first place.
They started their own 33.
Yeah, I think it was a really good return from Jalen Lucas that set up that drive, and then they only had to move the ball for like 1 or 2 first downs on that drive before they ended up actually getting points there.
It was the play after Philip Dunham got his pick. So Indiana started their own 33, Jackson DeCamper for 24. That was the chunk play, and then there you go.
Yep. So it was like 1 or 2 plays. Indiana didn't put together a consolidated drive. I will tell you that the last thing I'll say as far as bright spots go for the game, I just mentioned it earlier. Yeah, that drive didn't start. The drive started off a turnover. right? But I
Mhm.
mentioned the really good returns from Jalen Lucas. He looked excellent every time he touched the ball, returning.
Mhm.
Return wise, I thought it was going to go. It's the house. He put some amazing moves on there. So again, we know what we have in Jalen Lucas. Indiana fans have been talking about him all summer when it comes to the football team as being the one of the few bright spots, and you got to see it against a very, I mean, like a very underwhelming Ohio State team, but it's still Ohio State. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah,
it's like they didn't play well, but still they have a level of talent that
sure.
is above
It is
Indiana. And
another
the fact
level.
that
Yeah.
that Jalen Lucas is showing out against them and being, the player, the dynamic player that we think he was and know that he was given what he showed last
Mhm.
year are all great signs. So there's a lot to be positive out of this game, Nathan, but there's also just a little tad bit of disappointment.
I know, and I think you could have any stance on this game, even given the end result where Indiana, yes, covered comfortably against the Buckeyes. I think you can have any stance you want and defend it. With that said, yeah, I mean, look, you look around some top 25 versus unranked matchups. San Jose State in week 0 put up 28 points at USC, and then when you zoom ahead to week 1, Utah State had 14 at Iowa. Virginia scrambled together 13 points against Tennessee on a neutral site. Mercer and Portland State scored touchdowns in the first quarter at Ole Miss and at Oregon. Buffalo put 17 on the board at Wisconsin. Rice put 10 on the board at Texas. Tennessee Martin scored a touchdown at Georgia. All I'm saying is 3 is unacceptable.
Yeah, it's
3
bad.
points. And again, Matt, like your comment about the forward pass, Indiana had 9 completions. They had 158 total yards. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm happy they played close and the defense has so many positives coming out of that game. But when I watched it, I didn't look at that game saying, man, this is really Ohio State causing Indiana a lot of problems. I'm actually a little happy in a sense that Indiana didn't draw a weaker opponent in this first game, because I think if Indiana, for example, had Northwestern at home and Ohio State went to Rutgers, I would be concerned in Indiana scoring double digits in the point column against Northwestern in this game. And again, this team, this staff, they have the right to improve. They have the right to get better. That's obviously what's going to be the biggest point of emphasis coming out of week 1. But there wasn't really much from an offensive standpoint that stood out. And I think back to previous Indiana teams. I'm not comparing Indiana to Michigan. I'm not comparing Indiana to, a team like Utah, who had a really good performance in the Rose Bowl against Ohio State from an offensive standpoint. I'm just
Yeah.
comparing Indiana to Indiana. And in previous years, and I'm not even talking about the Penix and Freifogel and Whop Phillier years. I'm talking about, even with Mike DeBoer as the offensive coordinator, Kevin Wilson as head coach, Indiana easily got into the 20s and the 30s against this Ohio State program. And I don't think this Ohio State defense is as good as it was in previous years. I think you're going to see this Ohio State defense, frankly, give up more than 3 points to Youngstown State on Saturday. And so all I'm saying is, like, 3 is unacceptable, especially in a game where if you found a way to get even one score, either you would have said, well, Indiana's got a chance of winning this game, or if nothing else, Ohio State would have even more egg on their face coming out of a really pathetic performance from the Buckeyes on Saturday. If you ask me, this is not an Ohio State podcast. I don't think Ohio State has a chance at making the playoff. I don't think
No,
Ohio State has a chance at winning the Big Ten. I think
no.
Ohio State can have a good season, but I think we're
They're gonna
looking
have
at
three
three
losses.
three
Yeah.
losses
Yeah.
at least coming out of how I saw them play. And I don't think putting Devin Brown in really would change all that much. We saw a lot of good things, though, Matt. Andre Carter and Aaron Casey were outstanding from a defensive standpoint. I was a little surprised to see Noah Pierre get about 38 snaps on Saturday out of 68 defensive plays. Not sure if maybe they're just saving him for future matchups, for future weeks here, trying to make sure he's in the right spot. I know a lot of guys were going through some cramping during that game on Saturday. But let's just take a minute here, Matt. The Indiana defense did really, really well on Saturday. If they needed to get better. The last couple of years were terrible from a defensive standpoint. To see a couple of critical pieces and Andre Carter and Aaron Casey show up, and then seeing some nice supporting plays from guys like Philip Dunham, from guys like, from guys in the linebacker spot like Jacob Mangum Farrar. Now you do see something that is worth your time and your effort tuning in to watch this team on Saturday afternoon. Do you think this is sustainable looking forward to matchups against Louisville, to matchups against Maryland, never mind the couple of cupcakes that Indiana has coming up?
I think, look, the defense is sustainable. You saw the way Aaron Casey played. You saw the way Andre Carter, who, by the way, retweeted my tweet this weekend. So shout out
Nice.
Andre. But
there you go.
he was going through retweeting. He retweeted a couple HQ tweets and then my tweet about him being awesome, which he was, by the way. Andre was
so good.
Was so good in that game. And that's against a very high level offensive line at Ohio State. Like
easily the best defensive player on the field across both teams.
Yes.
And I think Aaron Casey was number 2.
Aaron Casey was number 2. Yes. Yeah. That just shows you just how mediocre IU's offense was. That we don't even think the defensive players from Ohio State were all that good, but it's true. I think Indiana had 2 best players in the field on the defensive side of the ball. And like, yeah, there's a lot to come away with that. That I like. Like, again, I did not know what to expect from the defense going into this year. I think defense was one of the bigger question marks again because they only returned 2 starters to the unit. 2 units of the starters. 2 starters to the unit. And so again, huge question mark. It looks like they knocked it out of the park with the transfer portal, which is awesome to see. Again, was kind of expected though that we would have a lot of really good first year new players because Indiana again had a highly ranked transfer class. Again, they're in the top 15, might even be 16th depending on where you look. Recruiting class from the transfer portals, including the crown jewel, which was Andre Carter. Yeah, looked great. I have no problems with that. They actually got pressure on Ohio State a couple times.
I noticed that too.
Incredible.
And it wasn't just Carter. You saw Miles Jackson get back there. You saw, Anthony Jones get back there. Yeah, it was multiple players.
Yeah. There was multiple players. That's a promising sign to me moving forward. Back to the offense though. Quickly, one last thing on the offense.
No, please go ahead.
You hired Walt Bell a year ago. I said I didn't like the hire, right? Yeah. But I'm willing to give him a shot. I didn't like how biggest game of the season is the first game of the season, the only one that we've played so far. Yeah. It looked like, to be honest, you were playing chicken shit. If you are going to spend all offseason talking up the quarterbacks and the players you have on the roster, let them cook. Like, what are we doing here? Like, there was so many times I've saw so many IU football accounts post the same video, 3rd and 10 at your own 30 with a chance to go tie the game, and you run a triple option play on 3rd and 10. I've been through this with Mike DeBoard, okay? I went through this, all right? And then we got Kalen. So if you're going to tell me that we have to put up for one more year of going for it on 3rd and 10, running it down the middle for me to get a palpable, amazing offensive coordinator, I will. But just let me know before the season starts. Because, again, Walt Bell, that's not going to cut it. Like, that kind of play calling, that's not going to cut it. Against Indiana State, let alone Ohio State, right? Like, you have to go let your players go make mistakes, right? It's different. Like, it's different if we go and lose that game and Brennan Sorsby throws 3 picks and we lose 37-3, right? And they just look bad. And we're like, okay, we just have bad quarterback play this year. Like, that's it. We didn't even get to see him try, right? Until like late garbage time, where, by the way, he looked fine. Like,
and Sorsby looked all right. Yeah.
He looked all right. He made a couple completions. His relationship with Cam Camper looked fine to me.
Good arm strength.
Threading the needle. It looked fine. Like, it didn't look like Indiana had a chance to win that game the way he was playing. In my opinion, probably not. No, like, the way it looked off his hands and everything, yeah, I can kind of tell why Indiana was kind of playing conservatively. But playing conservatively against the big teams only leads to Indiana getting out-talented every single time. That's what it was. At the end of the day, Indiana got out 5-starred, right? That's just what happened here. And if you continue to play like that, it's going to happen against Penn State. Trust me. Look what they did on Saturday. They looked amazing. Look what Michigan did. Michigan took care of business. They didn't look great. Still took care of business. Heck, Maryland looks awesome.
They look
right?
great. Michigan State looked good
Michigan
in the
State
second
looked
half.
fine. The East looks crowded
Rutgers.
at the top. Rutgers looked fine. So the only team from the East that didn't look good was Indiana and Ohio State, who both played each other and both made each other look bad. So I'm going to take a lot more from the offense, what they do against Indiana State, right? Are they able to move the ball? How's the offensive line look against a less talented defensive line? And that's
Can you give
there's
your
no
quarterback
offense.
time to
That's
throw?
no offense. That's no offense to Indiana State. You don't have the 5 stars, at that Ohio
Correct.
State has.
Confirmed.
Right? But they are a solid unit. Indiana State is not a cupcake. They're not a cakewalk, right? And
you gotta show up.
They got to show up, which they did do that week 1.
Mm-hmm.
But if they show up, and again, Indiana State playing in Bloomington, I've seen it before, and just in another sport, they do kind of get up for this game because it's a bunch of guys on the team
Why
from
wouldn't
state
you?
that
You
would
saw
have
it with Central Michigan and Michigan State.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's going to be a tough first, second quarter battle. Now, if Indiana is the team that we hope that they are, they will pull away in the third and the fourth quarter because they're just going to out talent them, right? But Indiana State's going to show up with that fight. If Indiana is not we shouldn't be playing. It's Friday night and it's for high school football. Or, maybe we'll do some conservative play calling and, this game shouldn't be close because we should out talent them. If they show up with that attitude, right, they're gonna be in a big
1 and
11. Yeah, you're gonna be looking at like in the fourth quarter, it's gonna be 17-7 Indiana State, and everybody's going to be losing their damn minds, right? So I hope the staff takes a little bit of
tough. I would say tough self-evaluation, right? Be hard on yourselves. Be harsh on yourselves.
I hope that they go into a little bit of panic mode as far as the team goes.
I agree.
After the Ohio State game, like I hope that there's a bit of urgency. That's what I was looking for. I hope that they come into the game with a bit of urgency because they got to right the ship fast. Because look, you lose to Indiana State, all of a sudden, 0-12 is on the table, bro.
Yeah, it's absolutely attainable. And I would say even more so coming out of Saturday when you see that this defense has the potential to be a top quartile defense in the FBS, right? You're saying, okay, if I hold Ohio State to 23, I'll maybe hold Michigan and Penn State in the 20s, hold some other teams in the 10s and the teens and the upper 10s there. All of a sudden now you're like, shoot, we got more on the line. And I've seen this with other teams across college and pro football where you start the season with a great defense, but they just lose that mentality because their offense is unable to put points on the board, unable to string first downs together, and all of a sudden the defense lets go of the rope because they're exhausted first and foremost, or secondarily because they just don't have that juice in them. Because why would you if your offense keeps punting every 6 plays? I did notice that Walt Bell spoke to the media on Monday here earlier today. He took accountability. Okay, great. Credit to Walt Bell for doing that. He said he played pitter-patter too long. And I am okay with the conservative game plan. Like, I do understand the value in avoiding a blowout loss in week 1, right? You want to avoid the Iowa from 2021. You want to avoid the Cincinnati from last year where you were just blown off the map. And it's like, now what do we do? So I understand the value of keeping the game close, but at the same time, the bigger thing for IU here, and this is the issue I have for most of all coming out of this game on Saturday. The biggest thing for me coming out of the season opener was, hey, we got to learn something about each of the players on this offense. We got to learn what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. We got to learn what to emphasize, and we got to learn what to avoid. And when I think about Taven Jackson, I didn't learn anything. He had a nice throw over in the middle to Cam Camper. He had a nice sliding 9-yard run when he was on the field. Okay. All right. I knew he had that in it. What did I learn about Brendan Sorsby? All right. He's got a good arm. Okay. Saw that. He's got a little mobility to him. Okay. We saw that. But what else? I don't know if he's a good thrower of the deep ball. I don't know if this offense can execute a screenplay. We didn't see any of those. I don't know if this offense has the mojo to execute a trick play. We didn't see one of those. I saw LSU and Florida State run them. I didn't see Indiana run them. So I don't know what they had there. I didn't see Indiana involved at tight ends at all. I don't.
Which to
I
me
don't.
is not surprising given
But
the
you got to
losses in the
figure it
offseason.
out at
But
some point, right? If you're scoring 3 points, like you have to get them involved. Now, okay, it's not like 1 week you learn and not learn everything. All right, okay, week 2, that's going to be a point of emphasis. Week 3, that's going to be a point of emphasis. But coming out of the first 2 games here, I think the first one you say, all right, we're likely not going to win. The second one you're saying, all right, we're likely going to win. It's not a toss up. Week 3 is your first toss up against Louisville. The first 2 weeks, I want to know as much as I can about this team. I'm happy Cam Camper is healthy. I'm happy the offensive line seemed to take a step forward, but whether it falls on Walt Bell's feet or Tom Allen's feet or the players' feet, I don't know. But I just didn't come out of that game with too many answers. I said, all right, quarterbacks are talented, wide receivers can catch and run, Jalen Lucas is fast. These are all things that I knew already. And so going into week 2, now I'm going to pay close attention. All right, can Brendan Sorsby execute a 2-minute drill, throwing the football frequently, get the team into the end zone at the end of the first half? Taven Jackson's going to get the start. When Taven Jackson gets the start, how can he execute a 10-play scripted opening drive? Indiana went 3-and-out on their first possession, and it was 3 runs. And I said, what are we doing? Okay, first drive, you don't want to get too crazy. All right. But with that said, Indiana's first drive was a 2-yard option run by Sorsby, tackle for loss. It was an 11-yard gain by Sorsby to get a first down. It was a false start. To get a 3rd and 1. It was a false start by Indiana to go on to 3rd and 6. And then it was a 3-yard check down to Josh Henderson. Then it was a punt. I mean, I don't know what I'm learning. So with Taven Jackson now, I'm looking forward to seeing an opening drive where it's pedal to the metal. And we'll preview Indiana State in a bit, Matt. But I don't want Indiana to be pulling away in the 3rd and the 4th quarter. What if I could have it my way? I'd have Indiana up 28-0 in the first quarter with 4 touchdowns on 4 drives, because then maybe I will be able to buy the narrative that Ohio State's defense influenced things more. But last year, Purdue beat this team 56-0, and Indiana State isn't exactly as good as they were last year. So I'm going to be paying attention to all of that. In a nutshell, Matt, lots of exciting things we saw on defense. The offense obviously has a lot left to accomplish here, especially going into week 2.
Has it all left to accomplish?
Yeah. Well, you're right. It was embarrassing. Are you with that said, all in all, big picture, are you more encouraged or discouraged about this team relative to the preseason after their first game?
I'm more encouraged. I will say that much. The offense scares me, but the defense actually delights me. So again, given the fact that Indiana's got some winnable games in their schedule against teams that aren't exactly offensive powerhouses. Sure. Again, I'm not talking about Michigan. I'm not talking about Penn State. I'm not even talking about Maryland at this point. Well, I'm saying Michigan State looked shaky at parts. They ended up pulling away from that game, but they ended up looking shaky at parts of that game. And let's not even compare Central Michigan and sure. Ohio State. They're not even the same universe, right?
Louisville looked shaky.
Louisville looked very shaky against Georgia Tech in the first game. Our opponents out of the West, like Wisconsin, didn't look great either, right?
Akron lost at Temple.
Akron lost.
If they lose at Temple, they shouldn't be losing at Indiana. They should be winning at Indiana. Yeah,
exactly. There are winnable games on the schedule for Indiana to possibly get past.
Well, Purdue lost.
Purdue lost as well. There's a lot of games of teams that I definitely look shaky as well.
Illinois almost lost. Yeah,
they gotta right the ship. Right, they got to right the ship on offense. They got to figure out how to move the ball down the field, and be more dynamic. They got to give teams a change up. Like if you're going to run the triple option every game, you got to have you got to have killers.
Oh yeah,
at every single
execution to a T.
Execution to the T. You got guys that don't care about a broken rib, a torn labrum, a dislocated thumb. You got to have
and no stupid penalties.
Yeah, you gotta have absolute psychopaths on your team, like Navy does.
Yeah, like the military,
the military academies do. You gotta have absolute psychopaths on your team to run that system, because you're just running full force into people. down after down after down. You're pulling the guards over and running them full force into a linebacker. Like that
Yeah.
system wears and tears away at your players,
Yeah.
right? And you saw it already. Jalen
Yeah.
Lucas like hurting his ankle
Cramps
already.
and the this and the
First
that.
game
Yeah.
and cramps and you got to be
Not
able to
easy.
get the ball. You got to be a little bit more finesse. You got to just throw a little bit more finesse in the offense, right? You got to get the ball in the field. You got to, throw a screen pass in there every
Yeah.
once in a while. You got to get your players
Different
into
looks.
space. I'm annoyed that they kept giving the ball to Jalen Lucas on triple options because how is okay? He's not a run in between the tackles kind
Yeah.
of guy, and there they are handing him off inside handoff in the triple. Like, what are we doing? What are we
And never mind, yeah, the inside handoffs too. That's what got me coming out of that game. They must have run
Oh,
Jalen Lucas between the tackles about 3 or 4 times, and yet we
like
didn't see
that's
one.
not him.
We
Get him
didn't
to the
see one. We
outside.
didn't see one screenplay. We didn't see him take too many snaps out of the wide receiver position either. We were told before the season started that he's a hybrid and he can do both as well as anyone. And yet, most of his snaps came out of the backfield. With that said, Matt, I also do feel better about this team. And it's not even so much about hey who's on the schedule because yes, like to answer your point there are a lot of beatable teams on the schedule. To me, it's more so just what I saw out of the defense. Now, I will say like the defense only goes as far as the offense goes because I don't care who it is. If you keep punting the ball 3 and outs or after a 5 or 6 play series, they're going to be toast, especially in the second half of these games. It doesn't matter who the opponent is. I think overall the Big Ten East looks as tough as it ever has looked, and which is saying a lot given this era. But there's no bad team in this league. I don't think Rutgers is bad, and I'm curious to see how they play over the next couple of weeks. With that said, I didn't expect them to completely dominate Northwestern the way they did on Sunday. With that said, I do feel better. The defense took a step forward. The special teams was excellent. James Evans was an awesome punter on Saturday. Jalen Lucas showed some dangerous return capabilities as we expected. Just got to clean up the silly penalties. And again, just from an offensive standpoint, I need to see this team take a step forward. It's difficult, but you cannot use new players as an excuse. Just look at the Colorado Buffaloes, folks. New roster, completely stripped down to the studs. Okay, and that's not just a matter of they got really talented players. I mean, Shadur Sanders, Jackson State, he was in the FCS. Travis Hunter's excellent, but they had a number of other key players in their backfield, their offensive line. The overall plan of attack was leaps and bounds beyond what we saw out of Indiana. Remember, Colorado was a 21-point underdog at TCU. Indiana was a 30-point underdog at home. Like the difference between those, not all that much. So it's not just, hey, we got new people. Over half the teams in college football started a transfer quarterback. All right. Yeah. So the new players, the new roster excuse doesn't fly. And so you got to figure it out. What I did notice, though, watching Indiana versus other teams across college football, is that it does feel like Indiana is going through, like offense 101 or offense 201 right now, where other teams across college football, even if they aren't as good as Indiana, it feels like they're building concepts off of concepts, and their pace of play, just when they run the play, is a lot faster. Everyone's proactively going to a particular spot on the field. Everyone's proactively blocking in a certain schematic way, not reacting, not waiting, not getting to the spot and then looking for the ball. They're anticipating, not reacting. Not saying Indiana can't get there, but that's something that did stand out even when I was watching, a team like Louisville compared to Indiana, when watching a team like Oregon State compared to Indiana, or a team like, in the like Iowa State compared to Indiana. It's not even top 25 level programs. It's just these teams are going out there playing with some more anticipation rather than reacting. Not the end of the world. Indiana, again, has the right to improve. Again, if they can just take steps forward, that'll keep the defense more engaged, more interested, more involved. I did like to see the improvement in the offensive line. We'll see if that keeps going forward as well. Folks, before we preview Indiana State, I will like to bring up the Hoosier Sound Weekly podcast poll, where we did ask all of you a similar question. Do you feel better or worse about Indiana after their 23-3 loss to Ohio State in the season opener? 76% of you agree with us that you do feel better about IU coming out of that game. Already over 100 votes in. Make sure you go over to the Hoosier Sound on Twitter and vote if you have not already. We also retweeted it over at Indiana HQ. Couple of quick answers. I liked what Y Sarge said. Despite few points, our quarterbacks didn't spend the entire day literally running for their lives. That in and of itself is an improvement over our game with Ohio State last year. Completely agree with that. Jack says, I feel about the same. I think this is a 2-3 win team, unfortunately. Hey, hopefully the Hoosiers can prove you wrong. Ideally, they pull off win number 1 on Friday night. But first, folks, we're going to dive into who won the week this past week in IU sports. And we got some awesome news earlier on Monday that former Indiana baseball player Andrew Saalfrank, who won the 2019 Big Ten Pitcher of the Year award, got promoted by Arizona in their minor league system to the Diamondbacks. He's on the major league roster now, another Hoosier in the majors. Great to see that pitching program really seems to be turning out pros left, right, and center. Great to see Saalfrank get promoted to Arizona, the Diamondbacks in a playoff race. So he's going to be pitching some big innings for them. He said in an interview before the game here on Labor Day that he was making a sandwich when he got the call to the show. So funny to see. So, funny to hear that perspective. It's always great to see players get to see their dreams come true after 20-ish years of slogging away at this profession, at this skill. So, hey, shout out to Andrew Saalfrank, who won the week this past week in IU sports. Glad to subscribe to our podcast for free. All you have to do is search for the Hoosier Sound wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay up to date with all of our information by following us on Twitter at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound. This part is important. If you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. Your support really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate IU fans such as yourself. We'll be here now through football season, basketball season, transfer portal season. We're not going anywhere. So no matter what sport you like, as long as it falls under IU sports, we're here for you. Matt, Indiana takes on Indiana State in week 2. That's on Friday night. We won't see point spreads for this game likely until Thursday or Friday morning. I would expect Indiana to be something like a 28-point favorite in this game. It will be on Big Ten Network Friday at 7 o'clock Eastern. Indiana State projected to finish 10th out of 12 in the preseason Missouri Valley Conference poll. They lost 27-0 to Eastern Illinois in the opener. They lost 56-0 to Purdue last year in a 2-9 season. They only lost by a score to North Dakota State and to Northern Iowa last year, a couple of solid teams in the Missouri Valley. Quarterback Cade Chambers was the Missouri Valley Freshman of the Year in 2022. However, he did not play in week 1, which likely contributed to Indiana State's shutout performance on the offensive side. Matt, there's a lot to think about here as far as week 2 is concerned. If you listen to a lot of analysts, they say, hey, the biggest improvement the team makes between week 1 and week 2. Last year, Indiana regressed. They were playing Idaho at home in week 2 in Bloomington. Sure, it was rainy, but both teams had to play through it. Idaho held a 10-0 halftime lead against the Hoosiers. IU ended up winning, but Idaho even scored a couple of touchdowns in the fourth quarter, which made a lot of folks very uncomfortable about the rest of the season. I understand Indiana State as the opponent, Matt, but the Hoosiers got to focus on the Hoosiers here. What are you looking forward to seeing on Friday as IU tries to snag their first win of the year?
I just want to see offense. Like, it's as simple as that. Like,
how many points do you want to see?
Yeah,
like, what would make you happy?
I need to see 30 plus. I genuinely need to see them get at least 4 touchdowns. I would say I'd be fine with a 28-0 victory. Like, let's say they ship it in the third quarter up 21-0.
I don't think that's enough.
Shutout.
I don't think that's enough.
I think it's enough if you put the backups in the third quarter. You're up 21-0. They're not getting anything done on offense, right? Like they did last week, right? And you're just like, all right, let's save the injuries. I'm fine with that. Like I would be slightly disappointed that they didn't get, to show a little bit more on offense, but like I would understand that conservative type of play calling and roster management and everything. Like, I get that. Like, injuries have plagued this program, let alone team, program for years now, right?
Yeah.
For years. So if you want to
And you
hey,
got Louisville coming up week 3, right? Big game.
yeah, exactly. Big game coming up. You want to rest some people? That's fine. But you got to be up 3, 4, 5, 6 scores
It's
before.
LeBron. Not one, not two.
Not 2, not 3. Like, you got to be up so many scores. I'm like, all right, this is over. Like, this is done with. I'm comfortable. And I think most fan base will agree with me on that one. So again, I need to see offense. And from a defense perspective, I want to see dominance, right? I saw promise game 1. I need to see dominance game 2. You show up like you did against Ohio State and against Indiana State.
Yeah.
And I promise you good things are going to happen. I want to see some takeaways. I want to see some sacks.
Sure.
I want to see the same kind of linebacker play from Aaron Casey. I mean, fearless, downhill. There's a couple times against Ohio State where, we're in the playback. You're like, ooh, that guy missed that tackle. But that guy was going in at light speed to tackle the guy, tackle the running back, whether it was Mayan Williams or it was Henderson.
Travion,
to tackle him for a loss behind the line of scrimmage, right? And he whiffs on the tackle. I'm okay with that. Like that kind of aggression on defense, I'm okay with. I want to see it against Indiana State and show me multiple times because look, Indiana State's running back, God bless him, is not Mayan Williams, okay? Or he's not him, right?
Yeah.
So I want to see against a lesser talent, a player that breaks less tackles, that's going to hit you with less cuts, right? I want to see the Indiana defense actually dominate the game.
I love that. And I'm looking forward to seeing domination as well. That's the word I'm paying attention to. Dominate, destroy, obliterate. Indiana State, again, Purdue, 56-0 last year. Eastern Illinois, 27-0 last week. It doesn't matter if Cade Chambers plays. He had a shoulder injury. There's no word on his availability right now. But with that said, whether it's Chambers or someone else, like you have to put them in the blender. Make them sorry for agreeing to this bye game here in the non-conference slate. Before I go any further, I do want to give a special shout out to Indiana secondary, who was absolutely excellent on Saturday. A new look group of guys, right? No longer Taiwan Mullen and Brian Fitzgerald and Devon Matthews and Jalen Williams. Bunch of new faces in that secondary role, and they were awesome between Lewis Moore and Kobe Minor and Philip Dunham and Nick Turner and Josh Sanguinetti. A lot that you can really grab onto and look ahead to, especially going into week 3 against Louisville and their passing attack. But week 2 is a great time for you to get fat, right? Put those numbers in the stat column, get the interceptions, get the forced fumbles, get the tackles, get the sacks. People pay attention when it's all said and done. If you have NFL draft aspirations, they say, okay, I don't just care about how you are against the great teams. How are you against the worst teams on your schedule? Do you have that same motor, that same intensity, that same level of play, no matter who your opponent is? Because if you have NFL dreams, I don't want you to just play well in the playoffs. I want you to be playing well in the regular season. If you have dreams of, I don't know, like, look, hey, if you have a great game, we talked about Keon Coleman on Sunday night against LSU. That one game alone could get him drafted, right? A top 10 pick in the NFL draft. So, in this case, Indiana's players can do something special where it's like, wow, it doesn't even matter that this is an FCS opponent. If I get a big sack, hey, I'm going to try to force the fumble, recover the fumble, and return it to the house. Defensive touchdowns are rare. You have the opportunity to get one of those on Friday night. And the secondary, the linebackers, the defensive line playing together all collectively as one. From an offensive standpoint, I want to see show-stopping touchdowns. I don't want to see field goals. I don't care for field goals. I don't want to see too much scrambling out of Jackson and Sorsby either. I want to see the guys throw the football down the field. I want to put them right on the money. If you run the premeditated option, I want to see you take those carries and make those smart decisions with the carries and the pitches and take those to the house. I don't want to be seeing 1-2 yard running plays here in this game. If you can't get push up front against Indiana State, I have no confidence you're going to be getting pushed against anyone else on the schedule. So I want to see this Hoosier team clean up in the trenches and unleash explosive plays on both sides of the ball, especially considering they know on the offensive side that it is their half of the football that has to take that step forward. I hope Walt Bell stops playing pitter patter, as he said to the media here on Monday. I want to see aggression. I want to see explosion. You cannot play conservative against this Indiana State team. I did find it interesting. The Sycamore's best player on Thursday night was defensive back Maddox Blackwell, who had 11 tackles and an interception. He wears number 17 for the Sycamores. But how about this? If you didn't know, if you didn't recognize the name, Blackwell played his high school football at Bloomington South. So it's going to be a cool reunion for Blackwell, a cool return to the city of Bloomington, of course, Memorial Stadium. And it's interesting, the Sycamores have 2 Bloomington natives on their roster. Tyree Rochelle, also a B-Town native. 58 guys on the Indiana State roster call Indiana home. So it's going to be fun to see some of those guys play college football at Memorial Stadium in that Big Ten type of limelight on Friday night. It's going to be 75 and clear, Matt. I mean, is there anything else you're looking forward to here? Give me a bold prediction for this game, and of course, what you think the final score is going to be.
So, bold prediction for this game. I think Jalen Lucas has a return touchdown this game.
Okay.
That's my bold prediction.
Well, he hopefully he has just one chance, right? Oh, I guess. Oh, it could be punts too. Okay, never mind. All right, got it. Okay.
He's gonna have at least one return touchdown, and 200 plus all-purpose yards.
Okay,
I'll go on that one. I'll go because a return touchdown I feel like is not actually that spicy of a take. So we're gonna go with 200 plus return yards.
Okay.
And then prediction 45-3.
Okay.
IU. I think they'll probably get us like garbage time points, but what they showed last week, and if the starting QB's still out,
yeah,
they're gonna be in trouble.
Yeah, they are very much so. I don't think I like what I'm hearing there. My bold prediction for this game, I think, is going to be. I think my bold prediction is going to be Taven Jackson proves that he is worth it for the starting quarterback role. It's interesting. If you didn't hear already, yes, Jackson is going to start in this game against Indiana State. I think Jackson is going to prove that he's the guy on Friday night. And, Sorsby is going to get some looks as well. But I think if Jackson gets the start, and if he executes 2 or 3 touchdown drives right off the bat, and he shows that he executes the first 10, the first 15 scripted plays, I could see a situation where Indiana puts Taven Jackson into the mix. It says, "Hey, Brendan Sorsby, thanks. You're the QB2." And Jackson goes out there and has a chance to start against Louisville in week 3 and then win the job the rest of the way. Tom Allen's comments coming out of the game on Saturday afternoon, and he reiterated again on Monday. He wants to see one of these 2 quarterbacks separate themselves. And if you're Indiana, I just feel like short and long term, while I did like some of the passes Sorsby made in the second half, I think Jackson is someone who has the potential to unleash 28 first quarter points on Indiana State and then win that starting job and keep it for himself the rest of the way. We'll see how that goes. My prediction for the game, I think Indiana wins pretty convincingly. I have it as 56-7 in favor of the Hoosiers on Friday night. It's supposed to be a beautiful day in Bloomington. It's supposed to be 75 and clear for the high. We'll see. Probably around 70 for kickoff at 7 p.m. Eastern on Friday. We're going to dive into our Big Ten picks of the week, as well as any other big takeaways for both of us in the Big Ten or college football as well in just a moment. But first, it's time for our social media shout out. And how great was it to see all the former IU men's basketball alumni in attendance on Saturday afternoon in Bloomington, getting field access. Mike Woodson had a wonderful social media bit where he was a little surprised to see Trace Jackson Davis and Race Thompson in his office. And they shared a nice, positive, friendly, genial moment in the halls of, in the offices of Bloomington, Indiana. But you then saw Saturday afternoon, it was Romeo Langford, and it was Rob Finnessy, and it was Trace, and it was Race, and it was Jalen Hood-Schifino. And those Hoosier alumni that we've gotten to know so closely share a great moment Saturday afternoon, hanging out together, watching Indiana, Ohio State. It's also wonderful to see all the former Hoosiers at Cody Zeller's wedding. And that was wonderful to see. Also across Corey Barnett and Jordan Hulls and Christian Watford, Derek Elston, Zeller as well. That was wonderful to pay attention to. And then also to see Mike Woodson's daughter, Mariah, share the great news, her personal news of having a child. Looking forward to seeing that youngster in Cream and Crimson in about 18 to 20 years. So looking forward to seeing.
God,
the
class of 2041.
Look, hey, you know what? Indiana will be going for their 18th straight national championship, and so you got to keep that. You got to keep that going. You know, you got to keep that.
Okay.
You got to keep that culture rolling along. So a lot of great IU basketball stuff that was shared over the course of the last week. From our end, if you'd like to subscribe, follow, like our stuff, you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound. Matt, on Instagram, we're not Indiana HQ, but what are we?
Indiana.HQ.
You can find us there. Matt, let's dive into our Big Ten picks of the week. I'm going to pat ourselves on the back here. We absolutely dominated last week. So Matt and I usually share a couple things that we pay attention to each week. We hit like 3 to 3.5 out of 4. So last week, Matt said Michigan State's going to cover. Michigan State covered. Matt also said Fresno would go into Purdue and win. Straight up. Well, that's what happened. I thought Toledo would win straight up at Illinois. But I had also said, if you want to be safe, just take the points. If you want that security blanket, I'm claiming half a point for that one. And then I also said Rutgers would cover against Northwestern, and that's what happened there as well. A ton of games to pay attention to, Matt. Nothing, I guess, nothing with no conference matchups, right? No Big Ten versus Big Ten matchups, but definitely a lot of intriguing non-conference games to pay attention to. You look across the point spreads, the over-unders. What are 1 or 2 picks that you have for the Big Ten in week 2 as we look ahead to Friday and Saturday this upcoming week?
Well, I'm glad you asked because having gone undefeated last week, I must go undefeated again this week. So I was looking at the schedule and I thought to myself, there's a lot of very weird lines, including the Virginia Tech Purdue line.
Yeah.
Because yet again, I am going to bet against Purdue and say that Purdue is going to go 0-2 and Virginia Tech's going to take care of business at home. So I have Virginia Tech covering 3 against Purdue. I will also go against another Big Ten team.
Ooh.
And this time, this is the spicy upset one.
Big Ten hater.
I have Wisconsin losing to Washington State, and the Pac-12 continues to roll on. So I have Wisconsin losing outright to Washington State on Saturday. Also, that's not the only Big Ten team that's going to lose to a Pac-12 team, because I have Colorado also beating Nebraska.
Straight up.
But that's not surprising to anybody who watched that Nebraska-Minnesota game last week.
I hear you. No, I love those. Couple of things stand out to me here. I am taking under 36.5 in Iowa State. I'm sorry. Yeah. I don't care how low that number is.
Going under. Yes.
I do not see 37 points. I do not see 37 points scored between those two teams. Look, Jesus. I got room for 18 safeties here. And so that's what I'm paying attention to. And hey, maybe a couple field goals.
Beautiful here and football. There. Beautiful football.
And then UTEP is a 1.5 point favorite at Northwestern.
They're covering. that's a cover.
And look, I'm not that optimistic about Northwestern this year. But I'm gonna take the Wildcats. All right, I'm gonna take the Wildcats.
They look so bad, Nithin.
I know. I watched
Rutgers. It. No, they made Rutgers look like.
I hear you.
How we made Ohio State look.
I hear you, and I'm actually gonna take that result as more positive on Rutgers. Than hey, look, Northwestern is worse than UTEP. I think you might see a little bit more Brandon Sullivan in this week 2 game. compared to what you saw out of Ben Bryant, who was just kind of a standing pillar in the pocket as Rutgers just teed off on him consistently. In a very warm, uncomfortable New Jersey summer afternoon, I think Northwestern will return home, lakefront, cooler temps, home crowd supporting them. I think you'll feel players and coaches and alumni get around this current team fighting through all the crap that they've had to fight through here. I'm in Northwestern is plus 102 right now to beat UTEP at home. I'm gonna take the Wildcats. With that said, just going forward, I think Northwestern's losing every game in Big Ten play. But this game, I think they look at it and they say, we gotta win it. We gotta do what we can. So a couple of real sexy picks from my end. Under 36.5 in Iowa State, as well as Northwestern proving the haters wrong and winning at home against UTEP.
There's some fun games on the schedule.
Like
Kansas, Illinois, fun.
That's second screen action as Indiana State goes on.
That's right. Virginia Tech, Purdue, fun. Colorado, awesome. Nebraska, fun.
Yep.
Washington State, Wisconsin, fun.
Yeah.
Heck, even UTEP Northwestern is fun. And
Iowa State. You
have for where I'm at locally now, Delaware, Penn State is going to also be fun. So
that'll be fun.
There's a lot of fun Big Ten games.
You got a little geographical tension between Temple and Rutgers. Rutgers getting 9.5 for that one. And so this is what college football is about. Like, as much as you want to break it down and speculate and predict things in the preseason, I feel like in this sport, compared to every other big sport that we watch, there are drastic differences between reality and the expectation. And I think sometimes a lot of great teams end up really struggling. A lot of bad teams end up doing really well. And so that's what these first couple of weeks prove to us here as these teams get more and more data. Zooming out a little bit, Matt, a lot of games took place in week 1 here, week 0 as well, across college football. What are your initial takeaways? Anything stand out to you, whether it's specific to the Big Ten or just college football in general?
College football in general, quarterback play is important.
Yeah.
And there's your breaking news. But nationally, the elite quarterbacks are on the elite teams, and they are playing well. Look at how Jordan Travis played last night versus LSU, versus how Jade Daniels played, by the way. Right. I thought is a couple years above Jaden Daniels in that game. Michael Penix, that's a familiar name, absolutely killing it for Washington. He looks fantastic. The team looks great. They look like they could be playoff bound, possibly. Caleb Williams is still Caleb Williams. Like USC, their defense looks like it's still USC defense, but they look like they have a great team. In the Big Ten, Drew Aller looks every bit the major QB that we thought he was going to be in the first game against West Virginia. And JJ McCarthy went out and did his thing against, I believe they played, who did they play?
East Carolina.
East Carolina, right? Went out and did his thing against East Carolina. They look like the 2 best teams in the Big Ten. Is that a surprise? Talia looked really good. Hudson Card looked pretty decent. There are good QBs in the Big Ten. There's just they don't have the Pac-12 QB list, because like Pac-12 QB is like 8 players long, because you have to put your Sanders in there. You still got the guy up at Washington State whose name is is it Ward?
Cam Ward, yeah.
Cam Ward, not Greg Ward. Great. Greg Ward was a great Ohio State player. Cam Ward up at Washington State, he's on that list. You've got Bo Nix. I haven't even talked about Bo Nix yet. Yep.
Dante Moore
73. Dante Moore looks great. Yeah. The QBs go on. Yeah. The QBs in the Pac-12 are insane. So that's why this year I would be surprised. By the way, I would not be surprised if the Big Ten gets 2 teams in, the Pac-12 gets 1 team in, and the SEC gets 1 team in. Because the SEC looked underwhelming, the Big Ten looked really good. The Pac-12 looks like they just have a bunch of awesome quarterbacks, which is going to hopefully don't all beat each other, right?
Yeah.
We didn't even talk about Cam Rising, by the way, because he didn't even play.
He didn't play, right? But the backup there looked really good too. Bishop, Brandon Bishop, was that his name?
Brandon Bishop, yeah. Maybe another Utah to Indiana
Bryson
transfer.
Barnes. I don't know who Brandon Bishop is, but
Maybe
yeah.
another Utah to Indiana transfer? Question mark.
Well,
This
and
time it works out well.
I'm happy you mentioned that because my takeaway from the stuff that I saw across week 0 and week 1 is I think we're going to get at least one newcomer to the college football playoff. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure who that is. I don't know if it's going to be, I don't know if it's going to be
Penn State.
Washington. I don't know if it's going to be Penn State.
Well, Washington's not a newcomer.
Oh, you're right. They made it with oh man, that guy. Yeah, you're right. I forgot his name now.
With Peterson.
Jake Browning.
Jake
Yeah.
Browning and
Yeah.
Peterson was head coach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All
They're not
right.
a
So
newcomer.
here, let me shift it a little bit. Maybe not so much newcomer, but a team that hasn't made it for a long time, right? Long time includes Washington and Florida State, right? I think both of those teams showed, hey, we could do some damage. Would Notre Dame be a newcomer?
No,
I'm trying to
they've been in
remember.
playoff before.
They've been in the playoff before, so Notre Dame and would fall under that category as well. Penn State and Texas, I think, have arguments.
Penn State and Texas have not been, and they both have arguments.
Arguments
Texas Alabama on Saturday. It's appointment television for that game.
If you want I like Texas straight up. If you want, again, this is my Toledo approach. I like Texas straight up, but if you want to be safe, you can take the 8 or whatever they're getting, 7.5 points that they're getting in Tuscaloosa. I think there's an argument for Notre Dame. I think there's an argument for Penn State, Texas, USC. Oklahoma's a team we've seen frequently, but they're really underrated. They're underrated right now because when it's all said and done, I think the SEC is going to miss out on. I'm sorry, they'll get one team, and it's going to be Georgia, if you ask me. And then the other piece of this is I think the Big Ten only gets one team, believe it or not. They might get two, but it's not going to be Ohio State. So if the Big Ten gets two, it's going to be Michigan or Penn State, and we'll see how that works. But when it's all said and done, I see enough teams play explosive, dynamic football on both ends of the field, and I think you're going to see some new faces here before at least one new face, or at least one face we haven't seen in a while before college football goes to their 12-team playoff, right? That's the number. And so excited for that. As we wind down here, Matt, Indiana, 23-3 loss. But hey, there are some positives, some negatives to take out of that one. Indiana State week 2, college football, Big Ten life, moving right along. What are your final thoughts as we wind down here on Monday?
Yeah, disappointing-ish week 1 for Indiana. But that was to be expected, to be honest, given the team that we thought we had coming into the year and the team that we were playing. Still, even though it was disappointing in total, there were still some bright spots to be had from that game, which was a lot more than I thought I was going to get out of that game, that's good news. Now, the rest of college football looks like fun. It's nice to have it back. I think I've said that for the last 4 podcasts in a row. But I'm serious. It's actually fantastic now that the games are going on. There's so much to talk about. And I look forward to another week of jam-packed action out of the college football universe.
Yeah. I mean, for me, similar
including
story.
Tonight.
Yeah.
We still got a game. We got a game in
Clemson.
15 minutes?
I don't know about Clemson this year. We'll see. Maybe they go out there and crush Duke and things look better for Dabo and his crew. For me,
I have the under in that game, by the way. I have the under in that game.
All right, a little defensive slugfest. As far as I'm concerned, I do want to emphasize, the defense for Indiana was really, really good on Saturday. I don't want that to get lost in the shuffle. There is a clear step up improvement that they made over the course of the preseason. And, Tom Allen deserves credit for that. And Chad Wilt and Matt Guerrieri deserve credit for that. It's not going to be a well-oiled, humming, rolling on machine right now as far as the Indiana football team. But when they go out there and they get pressure into the backfield, they get tackles for loss, they force an interception, they're sure-handed. I mean, Ohio State has 5-star hand-picked talent from across the country, and Harrison and Ibuka finished with 5 catches on 34 yards. I mean, that is an incredible accomplishment for this defense and something that now I want them to build off of. Don't let it be just a one game flash in the pan, blip on the radar. You have the potential to be one of the best defenses in school history. And you know what? If Indiana makes a bowl game, I've seen enough. It's going to be because of the defense. Limiting teams to 24 points, forcing turnovers, unleashing hell on their opponents. And again, getting to 6 wins doesn't mean you have to be Michigan, doesn't mean you got to be Penn State. But in those other games, starting with Louisville in week 3, really starting with Indiana State in week 2, you have got to make teams regret playing on the same field as you. And that's what I think I saw coming out of week 1. So hopefully my eyes aren't playing tricks with me. I'm looking forward to seeing this defense do damage again on Friday night. But folks, that about wraps it up for our 305th show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. To hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today, be sure to follow us at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound to make sure you don't miss any in the future. You can also go to our website, indianahq.com, to find it all in one place. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we will see you next time.
Peace and love, go Hoosiers.